Saudi Arabia built a century of power from crude oil it digs out of the desert floor. America quietly built a monopoly over the element that powers the security, infrastructure, and the computing future of the entire planet. It's called helium-3. It's a gas, colorless, odorless, almost non-existent on Earth, and America controls virtually all of it. It costs up to $18.7 million per kilogram, over 100,000 times more valuable than ordinary helium. And right now, the entire Western world supply fits inside a single fortified government compound in South Carolina, run by the Department of Energy, almost completely invisible to the public. This is how that happened, and why the race to control its future is just getting started. But none of that matters unless you understand what this gas actually does. And that's where this story gets genuinely alarming. Helium-3 has two jobs right now, and both of them are irreplaceable. The first, it is guarding every major border on the planet. Helium-3 is one of the most efficient neutron absorbers in nature. That specific property makes it the active core inside radiation portal monitors, the large scanning machines at ports, airports, and border crossings worldwide. These machines exist to catch one thing: smuggled nuclear material, enriched uranium, plutonium, the raw ingredients of a dirty bomb. When the Jason Advisory Panel, a secretive group of elite U.S. defense scientists, reviewed America's security gaps after 9/11, their concern wasn't just stopping terrorists carrying finished weapons. It was catching the material before it became one. Helium-3 detectors were their frontline answer. Right now, at this exact moment, helium-3 is a primary reason enriched plutonium doesn't quietly slip through a container port in Rotterdam or New Jersey. The second job is even more consequential. Quantum computers don't run at room temperature. They require temperatures so extreme that cold barely covers it. We're talking millikelvin temperatures, roughly 250 times colder than the vacuum of outer space. The machines that get there are called dilution refrigerators, and they run on a precise mixture of helium-3 and helium-4. No helium-3 means no dilution refrigerators. No dilution refrigerators means no quantum computing. IBM, Google, every major government quantum lab, their entire hardware stack depends on this supply chain, quietly, invisibly, without a single press release about it. So let's be precise about what we're actually saying here. The same element accidentally born from America's nuclear arsenal is simultaneously guarding its borders and cooling the computers that will determine which nation wins the AI and cryptography race of the next 50 years. That is not just an advantage, that is a structural monopoly. But how this rare gas is made? What is the process behind it? Let's start with the science. Don't worry, I'll keep it simple. You know helium, the gas that makes balloons float. That's helium-4, the common version. Helium-3 is its rarer sibling. Same element, just one fewer neutron. And that one missing neutron changes everything about how it behaves in the physical world. Here's what should genuinely surprise you. Helium-3 cannot be mined on Earth. Our atmosphere contains just 7 parts per trillion of it. That's the equivalent of finding a single drop of ink dissolved into 50 Olympic swimming pools. So how does America get it? From nuclear weapons. Inside every hydrogen warhead lives a radioactive gas called tritium. Tritium is what gives the bomb its devastating yield. But tritium is unstable. It decays. Slowly, quietly, at a rate of about 5.5% per year, and as it decays, it transforms into something else. Helium-3. Think of it this way. Tritium is the maintenance byproduct of a nuclear warhead, and helium-3 is the byproduct of tritium. America's entire supply of this incredibly valuable gas is essentially the exhaust from simply keeping its arsenal functional. At the Savannah River site in South Carolina, the U.S. military routinely recalls warheads, extracts the tritium gas, and runs it through a classified process called the thermal cycling absorption process. What comes out the other end is pure helium-3, worth up to $18.7 million per kilogram. No other Western nation has this pipeline. Not the UK, not France, not Germany. America has it because America built and maintained the largest nuclear arsenal in the Western world. But there is a twist in the story that no one expected. Something shocking happened that nearly destroyed all of it. It all started in September 11, 2001. The US government immediately began deploying radiation portal monitors everywhere, hundreds, then thousands. Allied nations followed. Global demand for helium-3 exploded almost instantly. There was one problem, a serious one. For the entire decade before, the United States had been dismantling warheads under the arms reduction treaties of the 1990s. Fewer warheads meant less tritium. Less tritium meant less helium-3. Supply was quietly falling at exactly the moment demand was about to spike off the charts. By 2008, the US was producing roughly 8,000 liters of helium-3 per year. Demand had climbed to 80,000 liters, a tenfold gap. And there was no quick fix. So the government did something almost unthinkable. They began rationing helium-3, like sugar in 1943. Research labs received allocation letters. Scientific programs were suspended. Border security projects had to be rebuilt around less effective alternatives. A declassified Government Accountability Office report from 2010 put it plainly. The United States had failed to anticipate the collision between its nuclear disarmament policies and its growing national security demands. The left hand had no idea what the right hand was doing. But here's the structural problem that made it worse than a policy failure. America's helium-3 supply is permanently capped by the size of its nuclear arsenal. You cannot produce more without building more warheads, and you cannot build more warheads without violating international treaties and triggering a new arms race. The monopoly that America never intended to build had a ceiling it never intended to hit. There was only one way out of this corner. And it wasn't on Earth. Here's the fact that reframes everything you think you know about the modern space race. The moon's surface contains an estimated 1 million metric tons of helium-3. For billions of years, solar wind has been blasting helium-3 across the solar system. Earth's magnetic field deflects almost all of it, but the moon has no magnetic field, no atmosphere. It has simply been absorbing helium-3 directly into its dust and rock for longer than complex life has existed on this planet. Scientists estimate that 25 tons of lunar helium-3 could power the entire United States for a full year. The moon is, in effect, a $1 trillion gas tank sitting 238,000 miles above our heads. Every major spacefaring power knows this, and they are not being quiet about it. China's National Space Administration has publicly named helium-3 extraction as a long-term strategic goal of its lunar program. Russia's Roscosmos has published similar ambitions. India's Chandrayaan missions have mapped helium concentrations in the lunar regolith. And America? In 2020, the Artemis Accords, a framework for international behavior on the moon, now signed by over 40 nations, included explicit provisions for the utilization of space resources. That is the diplomatic phrase for mining rights. Now, the West frames the Artemis Accords as cooperative and open, and in many ways, they are. But from Beijing's perspective, a US-drafted legal framework that defines who gets to extract resources on the moon looks a lot like the country that already controls the terrestrial supply, writing the rules for the extraterrestrial one too. That tension is real, and it's growing. What we are watching, underneath the flags and the astronauts and the inspiring launch footage, is a resource competition. The same logic that sent European powers scrambling into Africa in the 19th century, the same urgency, the same calculations, different terrain. And here is the asymmetry that makes it critical. On Earth, America's helium-3 advantage is capped by nuclear treaty limits. But on the moon, the nation that lands first, drills first, and builds extraction infrastructure first doesn't just win a resource. It writes the supply chain for quantum computing and global nuclear security for the rest of the century. That is what the lunar race is actually about. Now let's close the loop. Saudi Arabia has oil, a resource you pull from the ground, load onto tankers, and sell to a world that cannot function without it. That model built a century of visible, undeniable, highly televised power. America's helium-3 monopoly is everything oil isn't. It's invisible. It's silent. It was never drilled or extracted by design. It was born accidentally from the radioactive decay inside Cold War warheads. And it quietly underwrites the two most critical infrastructure layers of the modern world: who gets caught smuggling a bomb and who wins the computing race. Here is the one sentence to take away from this video. The nation that controls the infrastructure of detection, computation, and energy doesn't need to fire a single shot to shape the century. Right now, America holds that edge. But the window is real and it is closing. The moon is unclaimed. Extraction technology is still maturing, and the race, though it looks like exploration, is already well underway. Watch the lunar programs carefully over the next decade. Not for the science, not for the spectacle. Watch them for what they're actually after. Because the next Cold War won't be fought with missiles. It will be fought over dust. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, then please subscribe and like this video. And if you have anything to share, drop it in the comment below. I read each and every comment. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.